Here is Cheryl. Look around. All right. We're here, so we're going to start the reading at about 7 o'clock. So please get yourself, if you need a beverage, go ahead and get a beverage. And we're going to start moving into the other room. Ooh, I'm talking to these people too. Cool. So we're going to move into the other room. Please do take a bookmark. Or 2 or 3 or 6, trade them with your friends. And we are going to go. Look at that, Savannah says hi from California. Awesome, hi Savannah. We're gonna flip this around so you can see Cheryl. There she is. We are so proud of Cheryl. Yeah, everybody, yeah. We are so proud of you. Yay, hi Cheryl, says Savannah. All right, so we're gonna move on into the other room. And come on in, we're gonna get going. We're gonna keep live streaming while we go. All right, here we go. All right.
Well, I spotted the other rocker, Cheryl.
There you go.
Cheryl's in the rocking chair. Cheryl will not. Rocking chair. So get my prepared remarks here.
All right. So Cheryl, are you excited about this?
I am excited. I am also very nervous because I am very much an introvert, as everyone who knows me knows. But here we are. So, and I am very comfortable in this rocking chair.
Very nice rocking chair.
Which makes me feel oh so much better. I love rocking chairs.
Good.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Well,
Yes.
have people come on in.
Yes. I'll just
Pull up a
check
chair,
over.
pull up a couch.
Yeah, and Julie, we're having people sign up for us to send them a signed copy of the book.
Yes.
How do we want to tell them to do
Okay,
that?
I
I will
can
let
do that.
you. I will let you do that.
See if I can pause the
Okay.
live stream, because I really want to go this way with it. Cheryl, you're doing great. Your puppies would be so proud, says Savannah.
Oh,
Awesome. Thanks, Savannah.
thank you. Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Cheryl, do you plan another book?
Yes, I am already into it. Is a sequel to the one that I have written, so it continues with the same characters, and it's their next set of adventures. Yeah.
I am stuck with this, so we're gonna tip up. Let's see, orientation is locked. Rotate device back. So we might pause here for just a minute.
Alrighty.
Still live. Look at that.
All right, so we are still cooking.
We're still live.
All right.
Yay.
For people who are watching,
Here we
I'll
go.
show you there is actually a real book.
Awesome.
This is currently the only existing copy of the book. But
There's several chairs.
And it has no
they're just being printed now. So yes. Yeah. Okay.
No, you're in the
yeah,
right
I'm just
place.
gonna
Have
show
a
it to
seat.
people.
Please do. Hey.
Yeah.
Said I would make the announcement once everybody.
Yes. All right. Very good.
All right. Come on in. Come on in. There's plenty of room. There's a whole couch over here. There's a whole couch. Please don't be shy. Cheryl has not bitten anybody yet today.
Yeah, did you notice all my family members look up at you like,
I know.
oh, wait a minute.
There we go. All right.
And
so,
yet I sit right next to you. There you
Aw,
go. Yeah.
Yay.
Very good.
So, as many of you probably have heard, as many of you have probably heard, the books have not come in today. Sounds like they're coming tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
And so Cheryl asked me to take people's names and addresses and put them into a spreadsheet or write them on a piece of paper. Either way, I can do both. And Cheryl said she will then mail you a copy of the book when it comes in. And if you would like it inscribed in a certain way, please do put that in the spreadsheet or on the piece of paper. So yes, thank you for raising your hand.
How will we pay for the book?
Well, that's a great question, Cheryl.
Okay.
How will they pay for the book?
Okay, you may pay with a check would be just fine if people still have checks. I still have checks. And okay, I know I wrote this down someplace. The paperbacks would be $18 and the hardcover would be $28, and I will foot the bill for the sales tax. You don't have to worry about that. And if I have to mail them to you, I'll also pay for the shipping, so you don't have to worry about that. Because there were supposed to be books here for you guys tonight, so that is.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. And so, anybody else have any questions? Thank you all for coming. When Cheryl and I were talking about this event, by the way, I'm Julie, and I'm a friend of Cheryl's. I also do her hair. And we've known each other for a really long time, and I've heard about this book, as you all have heard, for a very long time, which is awesome. And when she said to me, I said, Cheryl, what would a successful party look like to you? And she said, if even one person shows up. And I said, okay. So I want to thank each and every one of you for coming and for supporting Cheryl. Lots of people talk about writing books. Not very many people get to the point where, you gotta hold it up now, not very many people get to that stage. So, round of applause for Cheryl. All right, Cheryl, we are at 7 o'clock and we're at 58, so you can talk for a couple of minutes if
And
you
then-
want it, but.
Yeah, I've just got a couple things that I thought I would say, and then I'm going to read the first chapter to you guys, and we'll see how that goes. But I wanted to share a couple of interesting things. One of our other friends that I know, a lot of you know, Becky Corley, one of our other dog friends, sent me a very nice card that she's planted a tree for the Arbor Day Foundation in honor of the book. So I thought that was really very, that was very thoughtful and a really nice thing. And then I would like to thank everybody for supporting me, and then especially Savannah, who is watching from afar, my book coach and developmental editor, and just about and good friend, as it turns out now, and all of her expertise and help and just friendship has really helped get this book from a bunch of scribbling on the page to this. So I really appreciate that very much. And I also want to give some thanks to the late Les Edgerton and the writing group that he had established that I was in for many years, because a lot of the nuts and bolts of this book were developed with that group's input, and they were very helpful. And then one other thing I wanted to say before we get into doing the reading is that this is a science fiction book, and some of you are fans of science fiction, others maybe are not as much into science fiction or familiar with it, but I wanted to say that through the years, science fiction has played a role in society, really, a double role. One is to tell just a rollicking good story that's just entertaining, and it's just a good story, and you can enjoy it that way. But science fiction has always also held up a mirror to ourselves to show us what might make us uncomfortable about ourselves, so that we have something to think about. And if you folks all think about the old Twilight Zones, that all told stories that we enjoyed them and they made us think. And the Star Treks, especially the originals, there was always a second layer to all of those stories. And, and Rod Serling and Gene Roddenberry were just, I think, visionaries in the way that they were able to weave that into their stories. And that's the kind of story that I wanted to tell. And so when you read it, you'll hopefully see those two levels in there. So with that said, I guess we'll go into reading, and I am going to read from this handy dandy high-tech device, if it works for me. So it says it's waking up. Let's hope that it's not lying. I hate it when tech devices lie to you. But okay, and there it is. So what I'm going to read you first is actually the dedication for the book. And, hopefully I can read that without crying. But I did want to share that with you because it kind of is the what was behind my thinking all these years when I've been writing on this. So here we go. Dedication. To my father, who always encouraged me and made me feel like I can do anything. Dad served as an inspiration every time I pondered what my main character should do. Whenever faced with a difficult choice, Dad didn't balk at making the right decision, though he liked to accompany each by colorful swearing in multiple languages. When I was barely a teenager, I tried my hand at writing my first novel about a World War I pilot stranded in the mountains who didn't emerge back into civilization until World War II. I pummeled Dad with countless questions since he had been a P-38 pilot during World War II. Whenever I got stuck, Dad always prodded me, "Did you get that guy off the mountain yet?" And that question became our code to keep writing and that he believed in me. So for you, Dad, yes, I finally got him off the mountain. Okay, and so now we get into the story, and I'm going to read, I thought about what sections that I might read for you, and I decided why not start at the beginning, and so I'm going to read the first chapter. Okay, chapter 1. Arice stood in the hospital room's doorway, every muscle rigid. He'd arrived early, expecting to slip in quietly to take the system readings while the child slept. But, silent and alone, the sick little girl watched him from the bed with shimmering eyes. Purple bruises mottled her face. A red line ran a jagged path from her delicate nose to her dry lips. The stark white sheet quivered as her small body trembled. His throat tightened. Maybe he should come back later. It'd be much better for the child to remain unaware of his presence. It'd be better for him, too. Not having to deal with the staring or the questions about who he was, or the judgment. But no, his job here, this job, should be routine. Easy. At least as easy as anything could be that brought in Allegrian to the Foundation colony of the Human Alliance on Loredan. Regardless, there was nothing ordinary about the suffering before him. He straightened his uniform jacket and crossed the threshold. Zah! He crooned words of comfort in the ancient language of his own people. It didn't matter that the child was human and he was not. The melody of solace was universal. Besides, he should look human enough to the youngster. The one protein distinguishing his physiology from human was not outwardly visible. The only alien race either Elegrians or humans had encountered was each other, and in appearance they could be next-door neighbors. The child's shaking calmed. Her warm response encouraged him. Brisk steps brought him to the girl's bedside. Hidden under the covers, the biobed's myriad sensors recorded enough infinitesimal measurements to enable Loredan's treatment system to cure nearly any affliction, or would have if the complex network had not been broken. Loredan's human techs could not figure out how to regenerate the intelligent data which gave the system its power. That was why he was here. Convoluted data issues, living data issues, were his specialty. He crouched, pulled a sterile wipe from the dispenser, and gently cleaned the blood from the child's face. There, better? He pronounced the words carefully. The harder he tried, the more the liquid trill of his accent became exaggerated. He hoped she understood him. Her eyes widened at the sound of his voice. Are you a doctor? She spoke in a whisper, but her plea pinged loud and clear on his psychic senses. No, Chimois. He searched his memory for the translation. Little one. Deliberately, he relaxed his expression. I'm here to help your doctors, to repair their equipment so they can help you get better. He reached out a finger to dab the wetness from her cheeks. Her eyes followed his hand dominantly along with those of rank and division. He recognized the shadow of understanding that darkened her expression. He'd seen it before. She recoiled, and a sob shook her frail form. He had no words in any language to relieve this fear. The door snicked open behind him, and he drew his hand away from the girl. He backed into a corner where the biobed's control console sat idle. Katie! The child's voice filled the small room. Oh, honey, don't cry. An athletic young woman dashed over to stoop low beside the bed. She grasped the little girl's hands. It won't be much longer. The patrol's tech unit has sent someone to help. Arice cleared his throat. That would be me. The woman twisted around and rose. Her brilliant green eyes shone with a feline protectiveness that reminded him of a mother Raktu, fierce and unyielding. Was this the small patient's mother? Who are you? Her gaze dropped to his sleeve. She inhaled sharply. He stopped himself from fingering the symbols stitched there. Two overlapping circles sharing the outline of a leafy branch with a zigzagging slash from upper right to lower left. Just a bit of red thread, but it marked him as an Allegrian, an outsider, an alien, not a next-door neighbor. He'd better introduce himself. Senior Intelligent Data Tech Arice. You're the guru from the patrol? Each word crackled with ice. Yes. His accent made a hiss of his reply. Her eyes challenged him. I'm Katie Kessler, lead system designer. You'll be working for me. Heat warmed his cheeks, and he straightened to correct his casual stance. Designer Kessler, I arrived ahead of schedule, so I thought I'd get a head start. I wanted to visit one of the patients to review some direct readings on the instruments. You should have checked with me first. She glared at him. You can't just barge into a patient's room, a child's room, without proper authorization. I don't know how you do it on Allegria, but there are rules here. He cursed to himself. This wasn't the first impression he had hoped to make, especially not as the first Allegrian to set foot on Lorden in 25 years. Sorry for the oversight. He hated the words as soon as he spoke them, but he disciplined himself to show no emotion. Like bitter spices, a wave of despair prickled against his psychic perceptions. But the feeling did not belong to him. Their argument was upsetting the child. He slid back over to the little one and knelt. The diminutive figure seemed lost in a bed appearing much too large for her. His new boss knelt beside him in a flash. Her hand swept the girl's damp curls back while she purred soft words of comfort. He spoke to the child in equally quiet tones. You have a lot of people who care about you, Chimois. The human woman glanced up, the razor-sharp green eyes now measuring him. Her face softened. This is Marta, my niece. I've taken care of her since she was a baby. Ah, he understood her guardian posture better now. The dire circumstances were personal for her, and he knew what it was like to fear for the life of a loved one. He eased himself to his feet. A glance at the wall on the far side of the bed showed the metrics he had come to examine. Floor to ceiling, corner to corner, a spider's web of illuminated trails crisscrossed the wall against a matte black panel. Clusters of intelligent data, tiny bubbles along those glowing tracks, expanded and contracted in a regular rhythm. With its sophisticated sensors, Marta's biobed relayed minute details about her physical status to the data board. Each cluster absorbed incoming information, digested, calculated, summarized. He held out a hand toward the wall and flexed his fingers, careful to use the board's standard sensory interface without enhancement by his own special Allegrian gifts. He didn't need to rile his boss further, or incur the cost always associated with calling upon psychic energies. A three-dimensional shape emerged from the display, a layered pyramid with increasing degrees of refinement at each lower level. He read the details, focused on the progression of the disease. How long has she been showing symptoms? A week. He ran a dry to run its course and was fatal without proper treatment. This patient, this little girl, was running out of time. Designer Kessler, may I review the regeneration process in your lab? I want to compare it to the readings I've taken here. Still stroking Marta's hair, she flashed a quick look at him. Call me Katie. He blinked. On Allegria, personal names were just that, personal, not to be shared casually. Certainly not with someone like this feisty human woman. After 15 years of living with humans, he was still baffled by their simple customs, and yet had to give his private name to any of them. He nodded his acknowledgement to Katie, but could not bring himself to reciprocate. He made one more probing inspection of the system display. Another psychic tickle whispered at the back of his neck, interrupting his thoughts. Apprehension. He turned to regard the little girl. Marta stared at him with wide eyes. Her lower lip trembled. Am I going to be okay? Katie caught her breath. Oh, Marta. He bent down on one knee beside the bed and lifted a hand toward Katie's shoulder. Stopped. The touch would not be appreciated. He brought his hand back to his side, swallowed hard, and focused on the child. I'll help you, Shima, I promise. Katie brushed her fingers over Marta's cheek. I'll see you a little later tonight. She kissed the little girl's forehead and stood. He rose and followed her out of the room. The long hallway led to a large atrium. Brilliant sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows to make jeweled patterns on the floor, displaying quiet elegance in contrast to the ragged misery of the facility's youngest patients. Even at this early hour, the area was filled with people. Too many people for him to slip by unnoticed. Wrasse. He bit his lip to keep from uttering the curse out loud. He kept his eyes focused straight ahead, even though his skin tingled under the stares of passing humans as they caught the symbol emblazoned on his sleeve. If only he could take the blasted thing off. But that provision of the treaty between Allegria and the Human Alliance was strictly enforced, and he didn't need to be a martyr. The scent of smoldering ashes announced each observer's disapproval, transforming into the sour tang of fear the longer each gaze lingered. At least none of them confronted him directly like that wretched security chief, what was his name, Crenshaw, had upon his arrival at the colony. He had learned to shield himself against those reactions on Earth and the other colonies, but here on Loridan the intensity was so much more potent. But then, what had he expected? Loridan had been the site of the deadly first contact between his people and the humans. 25 years had not been nearly long enough to soothe the mistrust Allegria had earned that day. He was glad when they passed through the hospital exit. They headed in the direction of the research facility on the other side of the concourse. The atmosphere shifted. The space around him grew dense with chants and rhythmic speech coming from a gathering in front of them. As he approached the group with Katie, their eyes darted toward him, expressions turning from spirited enthusiasm to thinly veiled hostility. A colorful banner caught Arice's eye. Humanity First Coalition. His pulse quickened and a flicker of apprehension ignited in his chest. He'd run into the protest group a few times before on the human homeworld. Whispers curled through the air, snatches of conversation about aliens and where he came from. He reinforced his mental buffer against the sting of their disdain. He glanced at Katie. Let's pick up the pace. The sooner he could move past the rancor, the better. She looked at him with obvious distaste. He flinched. The person who would be directing his work shared the ideals of the protest group. He swore under his breath. Under the weight of the constant uninvited attention, the walk across the concourse to the research facility seemed to take an eternity. His shoulders ached from the effort to hold a high-level mental defense against the negative energy in the plaza. When he and Katie passed through the secured entryway into the relative privacy of the restricted section, his tense muscles relaxed. The lab room was empty of people, yet well equipped. Display portals, control dashboards, and in their pristine cases as if brand new and untouched by human hands, ready for alien hands. That meant he was segregated from any human workers other than Katie. His jaw tightened, but he didn't have time to dwell on the behavior of others. He had a job to do. He went to work. 3 hours later, he still didn't have any answers, not even a good clue to the problem's cause, much less a solution. He ran his fingers through his hair and cast a furtive glance toward Katie. A deep furrow creased her forehead as she hunched over her analyzer. She hadn't said one word to him since they'd entered the lab. Silence draped over the work table like a shroud, heavy with its unspoken insults. He returned his attention to his working display. Leaning forward, he stared at the whirling strands of data protein visible through the portal. Intelligent data was alive, ingenious, something more than mechanical but less than sentient. The data threads grew and pieced themselves together into patterns, guided by rules embedded within their physical structure. But instead of settling into the desired result, the patterns sprouted into unexpected and useless forms. A fundamental level failure. He mumbled another oath under his breath. This was going to be harder than he'd thought. Maybe if he looked at the activity in finer detail. He tweaked the parameter to allow him to trace the data germination at a micro level, reset the process, and kicked off the regeneration cycle again. The data reanimated and started to grow. Under his watchful eye, the tiny filaments stretched, combined, pulsed. Their rhythm formed an unconventional poetry. Beautiful. His own pulse adjusted to throb in harmony, the protein in his blood in every cell recognizing its kinship to the protein that made the data alive. His Allegrian edge, the source of his expert rating, and the reason Commander Walden had chosen him for this job, in spite of the reception he was sure to receive from Lorden's inhabitants. He followed the development step by step until he detected the first inkling of mutation. Wait a minute. His inborn sensitivity to scent caught the faint whiff of something fetid, and he suppressed a cough. The fine hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. The smell of anger. Through that stench, he perceived a familiar energy. Allegrian. One of his people had touched this system, somehow, and with hot temper burning in their heart. But why? He slammed his palm against the control panel to shut down the exercise. What? Katie darted to his side and scanned his display through narrowed eyes. What did you find? Something, maybe. His mouth was dry. For an instant, he wished he were human, not only in physical appearance, but also by birthright. If he'd been born within the comfort of humanity's alliance of colonies and shared his ancestry with the children of Earth, he would not be linked by blood to what he had just discovered. He should be able to tell Katie what he'd found without worry about personal repercussions, but that energy remnant pointed toward Allegria, toward home. If he was right, one of his own people had sabotaged the medication synthesizer, and Allegria would be responsible for deadly harm to the human alliance. With a reverberating thud, the lab door smacked into its casing in the wall. Arice jerked around. A tall man strode into the room and stopped in front of him with hands on hips. His coarse, close-trimmed hair showed gray at the temples, and his eyes were flecked with worry. Status report? Dr. Vanderloo, Rice dialed down his receptivity to the burning reek clogging the air around the director of Lorden's Medical System Services. He didn't need his Allegrian acuity to know Vanderloo was not happy. His new findings would inflame the director's agitation even more. Katie interrupted before he could say more. Adrian, we've been coming to the same dead end, but Rice may have just found something. I hope so. The doctor looked him up and down. When we asked the patrol for help from their tech division, we never dreamed they would send an Allegrian. The doctor's voice trailed off, obviously doubting his competence. Rice stiffened, his muscles strung tight like an ancient warrior's bow. Inwardly, he cursed Commander Walden for putting him on an assignment on Loriden. Vanderloo folded his arms. 6 more children have come down with Donner's disease. That makes over 30 now who are sick. He hesitated. We were promised an expert. Rice's heartbeat thrummed in his ears. He had worked hard to earn his rightful place in the patrol's research and development branch with its stellar reputation in the scientific community, the only Allegrian to accomplish such a feat. He pushed Vanderloo's slight aside. I've got a lot of experience with intelligent data. His attempt at reassurance did not change the hard line of the doctor's mouth. Rice gave the data display another bleak look and considered the Allegrian imprint he detected. The broken synthesizer could not formulate the required antibiotic, which made restoring that function his top priority. The bacteria causing Donner's disease, with its confounding combination of human and native microbes, mutated constantly and baffled human analysis. The sick children had 4 weeks at most from when they first showed symptoms before it was too late. The Loredani needed their med system and what its intelligent data components could do. Now. He cleared his throat. There are still a couple of things we need to investigate. Give designer Kessler and me another 2 hours to follow up on our last test. You'll have something then? He modulated his voice to the most congenial tone he could manage. He couldn't make promises with so many unknowns, especially if an Allegrian was involved. We all want to make progress as quickly as possible, yes? The director puffed out his cheeks. All right, I'll check back. Rice's insides knotted into a tight lump. He'd better unravel this puzzle and fix the problem, fast. Then identify who did it, and why. And let the Loredani authorities know their system had been sabotaged. But what of the Allegrian identity of the saboteur? Disclosing that detail now would be a one-way ticket off the planet. Everyone he'd met on Loriden so far had made it clear an Allegrian was not welcome. If he didn't report it, and it was discovered later, he could be blamed. And if it was not discovered, would his conscience allow him to let the Allegrian perpetrator escape justice? And that is the end of Chapter 1.